2 online, and we're good. So we're up to 8.3, the Auckland Transport Quarter 2 Performance Report. So Alistair, sitting in for Claire,
Yes.
so welcome along.
Thank you, Chair, and look, following your direction, will be brief. I'd just like to note in the Q2 report that there's some good progress. 41 out of the 42 deliverables in the Statement of Intent are on track. 16 of 24 SOI targets are on track. I think the ones I'd just like to highlight, there's a number relating to PT utilisation, which aren't on track, PT boardings, utilisation on frequent routes and farebox recovery. As a result of that, we're recommending that there is a deep dive provided to this committee on public transport performance at a later date, and also recommending that as part of a future update to this committee that there is a deep dive into capital delivery. The report in front of you notes that Q2 capital expenditure was 76% of budget, but it is forecast to increase to 90% by year end. Finally, I'd just like to note that Auckland Transport depreciation is materially higher than budget, and this is due to a revaluation of roading assets. There is a review of that currently being undertaken to reassess the asset values, which will impact on depreciation. That's probably all I want to say and highlight, and it's probably appropriate any questions be directed to Auckland Transport.
Okay, and just a reminder, this is a Q2 report, so it's looking back, and so it's not the normal monthly update. So welcome up Dean, and also want to welcome up Richard Leggett, who is the soon-to-be former chair of the Auckland Transport Board. So Richard, great to see you, and thank you for being here. And so Dean.
Thank you, Chair. I won't really add a whole lot to what Alistair said, but it was a good succinct summary, which is a nice way to handle things. Can I just talk a little bit though about some of the progress we continue to make? So that was a Q2 report. That's to the end of December. Just to assure councillors and this committee that we're very focused on, well, what is the gap between current performance, particularly around public transport, the capital program, the sum on DSI and Maori procurement? What is the gap between where we were at that point and what we need to achieve to deliver by the end of this financial year, which is in June? And so the team have been working very hard on that and have understood the size of the challenge to get to where we need to be. We reforecast all of our SOI deliverables. We reported to the board in February on those. We believe that we will be there or thereabouts on the capital delivery, which will then pull Maori procurement. DSI looks like it might be there or thereabouts as well. It's just quietened down a bit, thank goodness. Public transport, notwithstanding a booming March, we're not convinced we'll get there from a total boardings, therefore utilisation. The revenue ratio, which is that contribution from users to public transport as a percentage, our target's 34%, currently sitting at around 33.1. We may get there, just depends really what happens with this fuel crisis that's in front of us. So look, a lot of good work, irrespective of the impact of transport reform. We have the team very focused to the extent they can on delivering business as usual. Some good highlights there in the program. You've been updated on City Rail Link rail level crossings this morning, but we've gone out with some big bus tranche contract renewals, which we've been able to secure very good prices, the level of service we want, and the continued strong transition to full electric, which I've also heard you mention this morning. This morning we also, and Richard can talk about it because he was there, Great North Road was formally opened. It's another great investment, so a lot of good things been happening. Eastern Busway continues, so those highlights are mentioned in the report. There was another question put before us, just to give a brief update on fuel and how Auckland Transport's handling that. Would you like me to touch on that now? Is that useful? So I've made a few notes. I'll just refer to them. Look, first of all, like everybody else, we're continuing to monitor that pretty closely, and we're very aware of the impact on people in Auckland, visitors, etc., those that need to run a business. And so we're working closely with Auckland Council, the other public transport authorities, Minister of Transport and the Ministry, Auckland Emergency Management, to make sure we've got a joined up approach. But we're doing three specific things, which I thought is just worth touching on at a high level. First of all, let's talk about public transport. We see an opportunity to promote public transport. You've heard Stacey and Rachel and many others talking about that. So this is, we can promote the cost effectiveness, half the price. We can promote concessions for students, free for children on weekends, $50 fare cap, all of those things. So we're taking every opportunity to promote, and that's in part with the strength of the month of March, and the promotion. We think we will get a bump in patronage. So that's a good thing. 25% of the vehicle fleet is electric, so we're having a look at how we will respond if fuel becomes more closely managed and rationed. We will follow the National Fuel Plan in that sense. It's got its 4 levels, we're in level 1. And so we have a contingency plan around what that looks like. Okay? So we will follow that, and we will work with other agencies ensuring implementation. Our hope is that public transport remains an essential service, so the city can still function. In terms of staffing, work from home is an option, but for a utility organisation like Auckland Transport, it only applies to a relatively small percentage, maybe a quarter of our staff. The rest of them have to be out in the job, so work from home is a limited option. That's the reality, but we will of course look at that. We're encouraging all employers, and we strongly encourage Auckland Council, take up fair share, encourage your own people to get onto public transport. You're not. And you need to be. And we're looking at route planning, etc., etc. We're looking at where we can also bring or accelerate electric vehicles into the fleet, which gives us that energy resilience, fleet resilience. We've also done a lot of work understanding our capital and maintenance programs. So everybody's very interested in public transport, but there's as much, if not more, financial impact on the capital and maintenance programs. Bitumen would be a good example. So we're having a look to see what is the nature of that impact, how might we manage our maintenance capital programs if they become affected either through heavier restriction or costs. Now these costs will turn up in the form of indexation on contracts, including public transport contracts. So there will be a cost impact, a rate and a tax impact. We're just yet to see that play out and what that looks like. You will have options which you will need to consider. Do we slow down the level of services? Do we change the service offering? Or do we fund the additional cost? Those will be options put to this group as funders when we get to that point in time. We are not at that point in time yet, okay? Question about what we do with CRL and the timetable testing in April. Our strong advice is just continue with it. You've got a big trade-off. If you don't continue with the timetable testing in April, then you're going to lift and shift risk into both when it opens, but also the quality of that opening. So if you stick with the opening and you haven't done the testing, it'll play out badly on day one because you're not sure about the things that you need to have tested. So strong advice is you stick with it, you hold your nerve, and we don't step back from that. That's probably a quick summary across the top on how we're looking to manage fuel. Happy to take any questions on both Q2, where we're at, and fuel. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Richard, do you want to have anything to say now, or you want to hold your...
I might hold mine until after the questions, then I'll have my little final goodbye.
Excellent. Okay, questions, Julie?
Kia ora, thank you, and thanks, Chair. So I just had a couple of quick questions, I think. One is you mentioned the Road Safety Action Plan, and really good to see that work happening and adopted in Q2. Can we get a briefing for elected members on it? I can't find it anywhere online, and we're obviously, it's 2025 to 2027 timeframe. During that timeframe, we pick up governance in this role. So can we get a briefing on it?
Yep.
Great, that would be really good. Just noting as one of the people in that DSI number for Q2 as well, Q3. No, anyway, it doesn't matter. The public transport utilisation stuff you've mentioned about South Auckland, I was really interesting to note there this focus on South Auckland, which I think is smart. What involvement are you having with local boards in that area to look at what intel they might have, what help they might be able to provide, and also is your perception that the general train disruption stuff that we've had over the last few years through R&R, has that been a factor for the South Auckland patronage in particular? So sorry, two prongs there.
Yeah. Look, speaking for the public transport team, they will absolutely be involving the local boards, but I will double check on that. I'm speaking on the principle of how we do things, okay? So I have no other expectation that will be occurring. If anybody knows to the contrary, let me know, but I will follow through. The utilisation issue is dominated by bus patronage, so that's where the issue lies, not on the trains. The trains might have had some impact on utilisation, but it's predominantly a bus-related patronage issue. But it's important that we understand it so that low utilisation and accessibility and affordability, all of those things come together, and we've got a balanced approach in that, and we've got a model that we use. So just because you've got low utilisation doesn't mean to say you won't provide the service. It means that we need to think about the affordability of that service going forward, maybe what the frequency is, what the route is, how we better promote. So there'll be a whole range of things in the process of understanding what is the situation, what are we going to do about it, what should be different.
Great, and I think all of those things are things those local boards will probably be able to help you with more than most of us around the table, acknowledging the ward councillors, I'm sure, would have some good input as well. Thank you.
Elf.
Tēnā koe here, mana, Chair, and tēnā koutou katoa, gentlemen. Look, I've got three very quick questions. One is around the surplus from operations year to date. And that surplus, what happens to that surplus? Where does it go?
Any surplus becomes yours. Yeah, it's just unspent funding.
So supplementary to that, transport officers. I know that when the CRL opens, and I know that also there is continual transport officers being trained by your team under John Strawbridge. So, Dean and Richard, more importantly, is there any of that budget, can that budget be spent for the training and hiring of more transport officers?
That would become your annual budget decision choice. Typically, the way that we will look at budgets is we've got budget provision for certain activities, and one of those activities is parking officers and transport officers. We're thereabouts on that. 18 million is a lot of money, but it's a relatively small amount on the total operating budget. So I don't want to say that it's not important. It is important, but it's a relatively small margin on a large number. When we don't spend it, that becomes unspent monies, and you as a governing body committee will have the opportunity to think about especially because this is going to be your domain in the future. How do you want to allocate your money? You might want to allocate it in different ways, and if one of those is parking officers and transport officers, then that will be a good debate to have.
In regards to the road safety action plan that you mentioned and delivering on strategic direction over the next 18 months, who do I see in regards to some of the aspects of the action plan, please? Road safety.
Yeah, so what I recommend is that that road safety action plan could become a workshop for all councillors. It is our way of responding to the new legislative requirements, us thinking about what the road safety issues are across local boards and particular areas of concern. So I think the best thing is to bring that in, and Teresa Burnett and the team will share with you what we are thinking, where we think that attention should be, keeping in mind it's been approved by the board, and of course, I think that'll be opportunity for good engagement.
So who do I see? You?
You'll see me, I consider myself seen,
Okay.
and we will arrange with Andy and Barry for a workshop at the right time, so you can all get access to it.
Copy. Last part is Māori procurement, and you've said that it's under target and the reasons have been outlined. When do you think we'll be heading into hopefully achieving the goal that was set in regards to the performance, please?
Yes, so what we notice is that the Māori procurement follows very closely the overall capital program delivery. And so as we shift from that 78% up towards 90, you'll find that 2.75% on Māori procurement will pull itself towards the 3%. So we're expecting those two things to follow each other. So at this stage, I'm expecting to achieve that if we achieve the capital program.
Kia ora, Chair, and I reserve my right to speak, and it's only going to be acknowledgements to two of the three that are there. So I'll wait till speaking comes up. Kia ora.
Don't feel marginalised, Alistair. Shane.
Thank you, Chair. Two quick questions, and just picking up on your comments around the developing fuel crisis. Just wondering how we're publicising the Community Connect scheme for community services card holders, because I understand the take-up of that is fairly low, and we'd be expecting it to raise it.
I'll come back to you on that. I don't know the specifics of it, sorry. The team will be across it. I've heard it discussed. I just don't know what the answer is.
Cool. Yeah, I'll just ask all my colleagues to publicise that if they can. Are we ready on a broader level for an uptick, maybe a huge uptick in public transport patronage?
Our utilisation figures would tell us that we are. So yeah, we have the capacity, but we also have spare capacity in the system. So if on our most frequently travelled, so it feels like, oh yeah, here we are, we're back again. On those rapid frequent corridors, we're able to apply additional capacity as required, or if required, sorry. So we do have capacity in the system. It might mean that customers might not catch the first bus, they might catch the third one, but it's a turn up and go service as well. So there is capacity there. If the capacity turns up outside those rapid frequent corridors, we have capacity in the buses already. The trick will be complementing that with access to the rail network, which we've seen an improvement in terms of reliability, acknowledging that there is some block of line to occur. So I think the capacity is there, but it might just require some behaviour change so that it's not all turning up at the same time.
Just to follow up to that, it's an interesting answer. In a scenario where PT demand is rapidly increased, so we've got a huge surge in demand, what is the biggest risk to our PT network identified, and how would we be looking to mitigate that risk?
So we planned for March, and the bump on March is 7%. Okay, so that's within our ability to manage it. If we had, and we will top out. We see seasonality sees that top out. So if we and soften off as we hit April and going forward, just as people adjust and we get over the initial surge. So I would have thought, even if we maintained the current level of service or access, we will be able to cope with a lift. If we end up with an astonishing lift, over and above the 7%, maybe we get another 10 or 15%, I think the team would absolutely love to solve for that problem. I don't know what the answer is exactly, but it's capacity through the bus network, and we've got access to additional capacity. It'll be maybe extra carriages on trains. We'll do everything we can, but that is a problem we want to solve for.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Richard.
Thank you. And just back to Councillor Filipaini's question, just on it's yours, you can do what you want with it. It's a 6-month figure, right? And the reasons for the overall surplus is a delay in capital and extra grants from NZTA. So I would imagine that we might make up in the next 6 months if we do the capital, and I don't imagine we're allowed to spend the increase of NZTA grants. I'm just trying to see what you meant by that.
Sure, yeah. So there's two things. One is the operating surplus, which was 18 million, and then the other is currently unspent but committed capital budget. Two different things. I was talking about the operating budget.
Yeah, but your operating budget of 18 million says it comes from the delay in capital and in additional NZTA grants.
Yeah, so that's yes. So so the fact that it hasn't been spent yet doesn't mean to say it won't be. We have to also, you're right in pointing out, we need to wait to see where we're at year end. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I understand the question now.
Yeah, no, I was just making sure because 18 million looks quite attractive coming up to a budget.
It's a year to date. It's not an end of year confirmed financial performance. What I recommend is as you're thinking about budgets, you'll get a reforecast of where we're landing, and that'll give us more confidence about what efficiencies or underspends are actually genuine underspends or savings rather than delay, okay? And we'll be able to differentiate the two, and that'll give you a feeling for what may or may not be available.
Cool, thank you. The question on patronage, so I see the child reduction is a concern, but I did get some increased services working with the team over February, March, which is great, but part of that was it wasn't being picked up. I could see it, and I know you're on the same bus route as me, I could see the buses were full, but the data the team showed the buses weren't. When the team did clipboard work on the bus stops, which I asked for, and they did a great job, it was noted that there were lots of kids not tagging on. And so it's giving, how much is that happening across the whole network? Not that I was wanting to, get kids charged, but obviously as they come on in a group and come off as a group, the driver's just overwhelmed, so he's not, or he or she is not letting them tag on. I mean, forcing them to tag on because it's just unmanageable. How can we deal with that if it's showing probably a big patronage gap?
Yeah, we've done. There's two sources of patronage leakage. One is if the device isn't working, and we think that's in a couple of percent. So you'll have seen it yourselves, as others will have. Sometimes you try to tag on, do the right thing, it hits red, and you're not recognised. So that issue is with ageing equipment, with the delay of NTS. We're holding that equipment together until we've got the budget to invest in new. So that's one source of leakage. The other source of leakage is people not tagging on and off. Could be school kids, but it's that's probably just quite a small group. There's all sorts of people from all demographics, wealthy, not wealthy, young and old, okay? Our work on that tells us, and I wish Stacey was here, but she's committed, it's circa 5%, okay? It's not the difference between 100 million and 120. We are looking to better ensure that with transport officers, so we've got greater compliance. So we're doing things that we can to ensure that we're not missing out on that patronage. Whether somebody is free or discount or not, we want them to tag on, tag off. So we've got a view of numbers, and if there's a charge associated with that tag on, tag off, that we're collecting that. So we're doing a range of things in there around education and enforcement to see what we can do to lift it and reduce the leakage. Is a leakage percentage? We do very well compared to some of our other peers.
Okay, and just the last question on the overall. So we talk a lot about this headline figure and how bad everything is, but then even pre the oil shock, we were getting more people on buses, trains, and ferries pre-COVID each week, just not 5 days. And the other thing is that when the trains are open, even the trains are getting better patronage in a daily calculation than before. But how can we show that in these figures? I know we don't ask for it specifically, but it always sounds like we're doing a bad job. But with 96 days of the rail closed last year, clearly you're going to get 96 days where there's 100% disappeared on those days. Like, how do we show the picture better? Because actually, when everything's open, we're back to pre-COVID patronage. But of course, when you close something, you're going to get a massive drop in patronage because it's closed.
So we could, it's a fair point. So we're giving you the actual numbers based on an operating year of which a number of days were closed. We could extrapolate a number, a theoretical number based on if there wasn't a closure and we had normal patronage, what might that number be? So that's a good question. I'll go back to the team. We can come back and give that feedback.
Yeah, I have asked a couple of times, but yeah, it would be good to have a number of people tagging on a week compared to 2019, even a couple of times.
Yep.
But also a couple of those, and Stacey's been giving them to me lately, which is great, but I can't compare over, I think the message is more positive than it is because it's impossible to use equipment that is closed 96 days a year. Like, I'm trying to show that Aucklanders haven't given up on public transport. It's just when it's closed, they obviously aren't showing up in the patronage. So how we show those two things together. Yes, it's bad that we're down, but overall, the confidence is there if it's open, which is kind of...
I agree. If work from home statistics show that on average people turn up for 3 days a week to the office, that varies wildly. I might say that's an average. We're not that far behind pre-COVID, and we've got the average attendance into the city and in the workplace at 65%. What we do know is the number of users, which is the exciting number, is up 30% on what it was pre-COVID. So we know more people are using it, but it's using it less frequently. So look, I'll talk to the team. I understand the question, and I'm sorry if you've asked it and we haven't come back.
No, that's okay. And it's probably to be fair, Chair, the way we ask our SOI, maybe we should have put an additional question in there. So yeah. Because it doesn't show the whole picture, but thank you for that. And on fair share, I have talked to Phil Wilson a number of times about this, and he is bringing some more information back to executive on that. I think it's crucial that our organisation joins the other 78 that are doing fair share. So thank you.
It's your leadership opportunity, Auckland Council.
Maggie.
Kia ora. Just turning to your report, I just want to acknowledge AT for the He Tohu Mō Te Reo award that you received. That's huge credit, and looking at the achievement from Q1 to Q2 increase, which has it now be delivered at 100% bilingual audio on trains. So well done. My question is has that extended across to all public transport? Is there what has been done across there?
I believe it has. I wouldn't know what the exceptions were. So I can't think of a bus service that doesn't have it. Yeah. So Alice is just confirming that it is across all bus services, which is my understanding. I'm not sure where we wouldn't be doing it. So I believe the rail was, part of the gap. But I'm not aware of. I think we're 100% on everything,
Ka pai.
including ferries.
It's even better to hear. It was, I only raised it because it does specify here trains, but I think that's a significant milestone for AT to be receiving an award like that from Taurewhiri. So nui te mihi kia koutou.
Okay, there are no further questions. So, right out. Let's, don't sneak up with the last ones. So John, then Greg, use your buttons. Not there. Okay, John.
Yeah. Thanks for the presentation, guys. And a rather tangential question in relating to public transport, Dean. And I know we've done quite a bit of work recently on, fare concessions and, the tertiary reduction and the $50 one and all that. Do we, as a matter of course, just keep track of international trials? And I think particularly of the Brisbane City, who have this like 50 cents for all public transport. It started with a trial for 6 months, obviously was successful because it now has buy-in from both political parties, and they face not dissimilar challenges to what we have faced coming out of COVID in terms of patronage and all the rest of it. And I know there's a spike now, but just generally, do we keep a track of some of these quite, innovative or bold, or however you want, whatever sort of adjective you want to use, moves overseas that are really aimed at like a real kind of transformation, and particularly when they seem to be successful?
Yeah, we absolutely do. We're key members, and Stacey has recently been chairing or in the senior leadership of the Public Transport Association of New Zealand and Australia. So we are closely linked into what's happening across Australasia, but we also participate in international forums. So we're always looking at what others are doing and how that might apply to our context and how it might apply to our ability to afford it. And that's one of the big issues around the Brisbane example. 50-cent fares is costing a significant amount to the ratepayer-taxpayer combination. The question for us is, well, if you chose to go there, you'd also be choosing to invest significantly, and there might be a trade-off that you're willing to take in partnership with the government of the day here. But we are always tracking and looking at these things. Our fare structure and our zone structure has been reviewed over the last few years between Stacey and I, and we got international consultants come and have a look at us and advise us on best practice and how that would apply in the Auckland context. So I'm satisfied to the degree you can that we've got something that works well for us and meets the objectives that Council and Government have given us. But we've always got an eye on what is happening elsewhere and seeing what we can learn from it, and then thinking about how that may or may not apply. Don't underestimate, though, that some of the things that we are doing are being looked at very closely by others as best practice.
Greg.
Yeah, thanks. Through you, the Chair. Hi, Dean. My question is probably around pricing and fare caps in that area, because there's, we've had some presentations recently around, making children free or dropping fares to get people onto the buses. Yet, so my question is kind of like this, just to put in context. If we were having trouble getting people onto buses, you might look at a whole lot of levers, and you mentioned some earlier, promotion, timetables, etc., as well as pricing, and you'd likely drop the price to try and encourage people to go on it. But when you've got high demand, like in a fuel crisis, and people want to get onto the bus, in my mind that kind of says, well, that kind of takes some pressure off because people are using the services in terms of pricing and fare caps, or reducing fare caps. So I guess what I want to try and understand is perhaps what's Auckland's Transport's thinking or philosophy around pricing and that type of supply and demand situation? Because potentially you could argue it's an opportunity to increase pricing if you want, potentially. So, just thoughts around that, Dean, would be helpful just to gain some understanding.
Yeah. Look, the elasticity between price and patronage, it's showing it's pretty resilient. So we haven't noticed when we have put pricing up as we have over the last few years, not a large amount, but the amounts that we have, that we have seen a commensurate reduction in patronage. So we've still seen patronage continue to grow year on year. So look, it's not there, and when we so it's not clear to me that you would necessarily get a big bump in patronage if you did a somewhat minor reduction in pricing. You might get a big bump for a period of time if you went to 50 cents, but then the discussion you need to have is how do you fund that on a sustainable basis going forward, and that's a whole other debate to be had. So look, we do monitor that closely, and you've got a government requirement of all public transport authorities that they meet this ratio between revenue and public transport cost. Our target this year is 34%. That will continue to go up. So there's different places, not just through the fare box, that revenue. It could be through that out-of-home media and advertising and other bits and pieces, but look, the substance, the 80% is sitting inside the fare box. So if you're going to meet that obligation, otherwise then you need to be constantly looking at what your fare structure is. If you chose to subsidise something outside what government is, then council will be 100% funding it.
Okay, so no further questions. So, Richard, your time at the mic.
Thank you. So look, I will make a couple of comments and a request. The first one, as Dean said, I went to the Great North Road blessing this morning, so that project has finished and it's fantastic. The people there are obviously somewhat biased, but we're all very positive about it. The engagement's been good, and the project has been completed in time, and I believe slightly under budget, and will be a long-term positive asset for Auckland. And I would put that in the same camp as Meola Road, which I also think is a great project. They have faced, or did face, significant criticism and were hard to get over the line, but they were achieved, and I think they will be seen in the long term as really good assets. And so my hope and my comment is that I'm hoping that Auckland Transport, the legacy that we leave, is actually better than some might expect, because I think projects like that are really good projects. The GI Tamaki Cycleway, another one, we've got Eastern Busway coming, City Rail Link, and a myriad of others. So the first thing is, I genuinely believe that we haven't done everything right, but we've done a lot of good work, and I hope that the legacy that Dean and the exec team are able to finish with over time perhaps improves. Second thing is that, and those projects are good examples, Meola and Great North Road, we work in a difficult space between central government, local boards and the public. And it's always challenging, and sometimes it's bloody near impossible. And we found, and I walked into this a little bit 2 years ago, when you get a change of government, particularly if it's a change of colour, then that is very challenging. And so it's a cautionary note for councillors, because you are going to be in front of all this going forward. And related to that, and I did speak to Councillor Hills earlier to say I was going to say this, there was a comment made this morning that Auckland Transport was encouraging traffic into Queen Street, which after the presentation you had around air pollution was seen as a bad thing. Now, I would argue that we're not encouraging. We are looking at trialling, allowing traffic into Queen Street to allow people to be dropped off in the evening, so it's improved safety, and that has come as a request from various people within the city and the central city. Now, that has been something that we as Auckland Transport, I suppose, have taken it on our bat to go, yep, we're prepared to trial. This is the sort of thing that you as councillors are going to be facing and are going to have to make those decisions, because the whole transport reform kicked off on improving democratic accountability. That essentially means that the group around this table and on the screens are going to be making the decisions and have to live by those decisions rather than going, look at AT, they've done something bad again. So that's a second comment. And the third comment, or actually this is the request, is that I think that the process, the CCO model where you have a letter of expectation, you have a statement of intent with KPIs, is actually not a bad process. And what I hope and request is that Auckland Council is held to the same level of standard that Auckland Transport have been held to over the period of existence, so that there are KPIs. Those KPIs should be consistent with the KPIs we have currently, and they should be reported on. Because as a ratepayer, and Councillor Lee's been saying that you're putting up my rates a whole lot, that I want to know that the transport reform is delivering benefits to me as a ratepayer and a transport user in Auckland. So that's my plea, and that was all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, so you guys can step back, and appreciate your report. Thank you, Alistair. Okay, discussion. Shane.
Yeah, just a really quick one in line with my questions. Just want to encourage all of my colleagues to have a bit of a think about how you are promoting the community services card, the fare scheme that we have at AT. And so 50% off your fares if you're a holder, and you get a free hop card if you don't already have one of those, if you have a community services card. So can you please share that amongst your communities and get more uptick of this, because it's a really important scheme. More and more people are doing it tough, and I would just encourage you to get the word out, please. That was all. Thanks, Chair.
Alf.
Tēnā koe hea mana. I'm just going to spend my 10 minutes on acknowledging two of the three gentlemen. And for those that looked at me and said 10 minutes, I was joking. It's only 5. But look, yeah, just wanted to see the looks on people's faces. My first acknowledgement is to you, Richard. Richard, when you got the position in the 1st of February 2024, every contact that I've had with you has been straight up, and I always acknowledge that. You have been approachable, and I congratulate you on the leadership role that you had with the board. So ngā mihi ki a koe. Dean, 2019, over 5 years as the Auckland Council Chief Operating Officer. I thought it may have been the last time that I would have seen you, but then you decided to come back into the fold. And for nearly 3 years now as the CEO of Auckland Transport, and your leadership through this and through the times that we've gone through with the legislation. I want to acknowledge you. More importantly, I want to acknowledge your family for allowing you to come back into the fold. Who knows what happens next term? If I'm still around this table, you may be back again. A third iteration. But Dean, I just wanted to acknowledge you with all the work, and in particular, and our rangatira Māori Tukerangi from Haukura mentioned some of the awards, and in particular, under Māori Outcomes, he tohu mō te reo ora language use award last year. Ngā mihi ki a koe, my friend, because that one there was acknowledged with a few other people I know around Aotearoa in regards to that. Also around the bilingual audio that member Tukerangi had mentioned, but I think the last one from me is Ngā Kete Kiwai, the program there, and our kaimahi that have gone through that. So, you know, I hope I do, and our paths do cross again, Dean, because you are a true leader, and I just wanted to acknowledge you, and again, lastly, your family. Ngā mihi kia kōrua to you both. Chair, if there's no mover for this, I will move this particular item, so kia ora.
Thank you, Alf. Richard.
Kia ora, thank you. I'll acknowledge Dean next time because I think he's got one more meeting. But And thank you to Chair Richard for his service to the city during a pretty tough time bringing Auckland, bringing transport back post-COVID as well. Just a few comments, and I guess it is on the oil shock and the direction, but also that we don't always do well at telling the positives, which can end up driving people away. And I guess it is the facts that I did ask Stacey a couple of weeks ago for the updated figures on the daily reporting, and we are back. Auckland transport and public transport is up 30% on users. The change between 20% and 40% on tertiary has increased the number of people using the tertiary concession by 15,000, which is huge. That's a huge change since December, that now 65,000 people are using that tertiary discount, which shows it does work. I would, as Councillor Watson said, like something like 50-cent fares, but I know that's the state government putting in about $400 million. Being in Brisbane last year, it was phenomenal, but obviously we're limited to be able to do that ourselves. The patronage, the only times it's really been down on pre-COVID numbers is the times when the rail is closed. And obviously, we had some discussion a couple of items ago, the rail closures are because, and you look back at the Kiwi Rail announcements back in 2022, some of that rail corridor hadn't been upgraded since it was built in 1870. So a lot of the base of all those tracks weren't done. And thankfully for the government in 2022, announcing $330 million to upgrade our rail, which would have had to have been done regardless of City Rail Link, but I guess it's quite important that the rail corridors don't fail as soon as we open a big asset. But that will transform the city as well. So I do want to congratulate AT for really going hard on public transport, but it is almost impossible to keep those stats as high as we want them to when you've got it closed for a third of the year, which was last year, and significant closures this year, what makes it really difficult for our communities to access it. Also want to give kudos to Stacey and the team when we were having some massive issues on the shore in February and March with patronage numbers, and like I mentioned, some of it wasn't showing up in the data. So a bunch of staff who I saw as I was passing them on the bus were standing at bus stops, checking the patronage of the buses, checking if people were getting on and off. And it wasn't necessarily the driver's fault or the kids' fault, but when 20 or 30 kids are getting on at once on a very busy road with buses on Oniwa Road, 3 or 4 buses, I think it's sometimes just easier for everyone to pile in, pile out without tagging on. I guess we'll have to figure out how to deal with that, but it wasn't showing up in the data. So the team, listened to my concerns that I was seeing and got out on the road and got us some extra double-deckers, got us some extra 94s and 933s to fill the gaps. And actually, yes, there's still some issues, but most people are happy. So I've found, this year that when we've seen a big increase to public transport, people are jumping on. To the fuel crisis, I feel like we're not necessarily acting as strongly as we could, especially walking and cycling. The massive cuts the government did 2 years ago to walking and cycling is now showing that probably a bad idea. If more kids could walk and cycle to school right now, the pressure on families, the pressure on our roads, the pressure on pockets wouldn't be so bad. But I am proud that this council, I think we looked at as a little bit stupid at the beginning to ban, in 2021, it was questioned of us, we banned the purchase of diesel buses. I think at the time some said we couldn't do it, but we did. And by the middle of this year, we'll have, I think, 450 electric buses, which is significant, not just on emissions and air quality that we heard about today, but also on cost. That will help our rates, that will help the cost of public transport, and by the middle of next year, we'll be at 600 electric buses. We already right now, have the biggest electric bus fleet in the Southern Hemisphere, which is pretty massive. And despite not a lot of people saying it, we have the best frequent bus network in the whole Southern Hemisphere as well. Australian cities, I talked to councillors over there, are jealous of our frequent network and the way we're increasing it, the way we're using the climate action targeted rate. I think there's a new 6 more frequent services coming on board this year. Even the 94 on the shore got 500 additional users a day when it became a frequent route. So we've got a lot more to do, but I think right now when the city's struggling, we should be doing a lot more. So, kia ora.
Right on 5 minutes. Lotu.
Kia ora, thanks, Chair. Last night I filled my car up and it was $3.50. And I think that's probably one of the cheaper places around the city to do it. And this morning I gave my apologies because I left a little bit later than usual from Manukau. Usually it takes me an hour to get here. But to my surprise, the motorway, State Highway 1, was actually moving quite freely. And I think we're already starting to see people being agile and choosing other ways to work and to commute. And so that's a good thing, but not when, not the reason that that's happening. And I think we're going to start to see more and more people choosing to do things differently as a result of this fuel crisis, on top of the cost of living crisis that many of our whānau are already going through. So it does give me some confidence hearing from our team today that our current system, the way that it's going, has capacity to handle an upsurge, but I'm still a little bit worried that we may not have capacity to handle a huge or a significant or a sudden upsurge. So, I'll be somewhat confident at this stage, but like Councillor Hill said, there's probably a lot more that we can still do as an organisation and as a city, as well as with central government to mitigate some of those risks going forward. I do want to thank as well the Chair, Richard, lovely to see you today. I was on the Performance and Appointments Committee when we went through that very difficult, somewhat complex process of appointing a new chair to Auckland Transport. And I think what you've brought to the table and what you've brought to the board is a real sense of calm and your mild manner, which has really helped when there are difficult situations that you've had to navigate with the board, but also that real balance in understanding transport and public transport and the different needs of our city. So I really thank you for the time that you've led the board, and I wish you well in your next endeavours as well. And I think that we'll continue to learn from the leadership and the wisdom that you've left with us, especially your parting comment that we should be wary or, be careful what we wished for. So kia ora, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Lotu. Greg.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Perhaps picking up on Lotu's comments there. I just want to, I guess, reinforce and acknowledge the comments given by the Chair of Auckland Transport to us today. It may have been framed as a warning, or it might have been framed as a risk, or perhaps words of caution might be the most subtle way of him alluding to a reality that's fast coming down for elected members. Something, if we're having to make these decisions going forward, not just as a governing body level and that's committee level, so it also includes Okura in these decisions at regional levels, we have to be able to answer the calls from Aucklanders about why those decisions were made. As Richard indicated too, there's no more passing the buck and blaming somebody else, the rest on our shoulders. And of course, that is likely to be divisive. Not everyone's going to agree around the table, and there will be majority democratic decisions. And we may find that there's councillors that don't support that and will take a different attitude towards informing the public than others. So there's some real risks there, and I just appreciate that being highlighted by the Chair of Auckland Transport. Not only does that exist at the committee level or a regional level, that will also exist for elected members at a local board level, and they will face exactly the same risks of divisiveness and potential failure of this reform. Let's see how it goes. There could be a prediction from the chair there, but I appreciate him mentioning it. If there was a failure in the reform, that's going to take a number of years probably to show itself. However, if it does fail, it's more likely to be due to political forces and issues rather than operational forces and issues. So just a call out to the Chair of Auckland Transport. Thank you for mentioning that in an open forum to elected members and to Aucklanders about that very real risk. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Mike.
Yes, I'd like to acknowledge the chair of Auckland Transport and the outgoing board. I was a board member up to July 2023, and it's interesting, I don't think there's one member of the board still there, perhaps one, who was a director when I was a director, which gives you some indication of the changes and pressure AT has been under in recent years. And I agree with some of the comments Richard has made in terms on how things have worked out for AT. I'll come back to that. I would disagree with the comments, not just from Richard, but from Dean as well, that in terms of public transport, we're doing okay. I've been in this game in regard to public transport going back to 1992 and sat with older, more experienced and wiser members of the Auckland Regional Council who agreed to take a punt and buy all the second-hand DMUs from Perth when Perth went electric, and in so doing kept rail public transport alive in Auckland when it was virtually extinct. And so I have skin in the game, if you like. I was a director of AT for nearly 7 years, and of course before that the chairman of the Auckland Regional Council. And so when I make a criticism of AT, I'm thinking about the mission. Now, in terms of, just as an aside, we live in unusual times, perhaps very dangerous times. And in terms of the fuel price challenge or the fuel availability challenge, I think we will see a major spike of PT, despite some of the shortcomings of the services that we have offered. Be in no doubt, whether fuel goes up or tickets go up, there is almost immediate public response. It is because I guess the majority of PT users are working people on incomes that are not as high as some of the more privileged people in our society that make all the decisions. It's very, very price sensitive. I'd make that point. In terms of public transport itself, prior to, at 2019, prior to the pandemic, we had 103 million passenger trips per year, and the ambition of the mayor and councillors at that time, which everyone signed up to, I understand, was 500 million by 2030. We're currently around about 95 million. And indeed, rail is holding back the numbers, but it's not the only reason why we are stuck and still below 2019 in patronage. And at the same time, the amount of money going into PT has gone from $540 million a year to around about $750 million a year. So in terms of a return, the mission is not going as well as we hoped. Now, AT, as we know it, is being disbanded or broken up. And I think I have to say there's, it's not the first time I've mentioned this, the decision is not really fair to AT. And I think Richard has made a point that in terms of KPIs, in other words, accountability, we have to start taking responsibility. And I completely agree with him on that. You see, what I find unfair is that AT has been criticised in the media from time to time on a regular basis by the mayor. But when AT comes to this committee, it spends a lot of time and works very, very hard presenting to the councillors, but when they leave the room, when they leave the building, they would rightfully feel that the councillors are completely behind them, so they're on the right track. Now, from time to time, I've been critical, and I ask the hard questions, and I'm not ashamed of that. That's my job, and I will continue to do so. But the unfair aspect of it is that AT has been cheered on, rightly or wrongly, in everything it does, and the rug has been pulled out from under it by the government. Why has the government done this? The government has done it. Obviously, governments are made up of elected politicians. They are aware that AT is actually very unpopular and is not succeeding. And so why is that? I think that we in this room who have been virtual cheerleaders for AT, rightly or wrongly, need to take some of the responsibility. However, I'll leave it at that and thank Richard and the board members and Dean. I'm not too sure, it's not really my business what's going to happen with Dean, but the thing is to thank them for their services. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, no further comments, so I'll just make a couple of closing comments and just, yeah, look, Dean's got a couple more meetings to go with us. He'll be loving that and the thought of that when he finishes up in a month or so. So there'll be plenty of opportunities to thank you, Dean, but your last quarterly report, so that's one of them out of the way, so thank you. And to Richard, and you'll see up there that there is there's an additional Chair's Rec, just thanking this current outgoing board, but all of the previous boards of Auckland Transport since 2010 for their contribution, because it has been at times bumpy road for them. You know, there's a few of us sitting around the table who have spent some time on that board and understand the challenges that they do have with 2 political masters and 2 funding masters, and then the court of public opinion. Richard's quite right that the accountability and the spotlight will now be on this room in terms of some of the decision making, and that'll include, and I just hope that we don't lose our spine and are able to make hard decisions that AT have been required to make over the years. We don't have to agree with those decisions that have been made, and I certainly haven't, but they've been made, and so they've taken a little bit of courage, and often they've been unpopular, and they've ridden that wave. So I just want to acknowledge, Richard, your leadership. You came in at a pretty interesting time for AT. I was on the board then when you first started, and certainly the board was heading in a different direction. As Mike commented, there was a huge change in the membership and the direction of that board that came from, and then sort of the change in government, also in the direction from them in the setting of policy, changed things as well. So you have navigated that well, mate. I know it's been frustrating for you at times that you've worked really, really hard, the nighttime calls and concerns and things. So thank you for your work since taking on the job and shepherding through, I suppose, until this change. And so now you can probably, after Thursday, just sit back and watch with interest as to how the governors of Auckland Council take on the role of governing a pretty challenging beast. So well done. You can relax and not have to worry about it anymore. So I'm sure you'll enjoy that. But look back and think you've contributed a lot. So well done, mate. So it's been moved and seconded. There's no further comments. So all of those in favour say aye. Aye. And against, carried. The next item is the authorised vehicle only zone. Look, I'm just going to take a couple of minutes, just break, because there's a little bit of work just going on in behind the scenes with the changes to the Chair's Rec, and we just want to make sure that we get the right wording up there in terms of the report back that might satisfy some of the people who have got some concerns. So if we just take a 3-minute breather, and hopefully that's enough